Good morning, this is Faith at Faith and Books. It's a Saturday morning in August, forget the date, and it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. It's already really muggy out. We've had a week of just constant rain. We're just saturated. I feel so bad for people who are in drought because I just am hating this rain. But today it's not raining, so that's good. Anyway, I'm just going to review two books that I finished this week. So the first one is Strength to Love, which is a collection of Dr. Martin Luther King's sermons, some of his sermons. And I read this with what I keep referring to as my Christian Social Justice Book Club. It's really the AND campaign, and I will link to it below. And I cannot express how meaningful this book club was. We've been reading this for several months. It's only 14 or 15 chapters, but we met, it was 15 chapters, and we met every Tuesday on Zoom at 8, from 8 to 9, so we've been doing this for several months now, and it was a neat group. We started off with 7 people, and then 3 of them eventually dropped out. Their life was just too busy. It was work, or one of them's getting married to somebody from Malawi and had to go to Malawi. That's really hard to say. And so there was just 4 of us left, 1 guy, 3 women, 2 white, 2 black. And it was so wonderful too, in this time of so much tension, to have sort of a mixed group, and the way we were all on the same page though when it came to being Christians and wanting to live out the Christian principles in our life and trying to figure out how to do it. And Dr. Martin Luther King really inspired us with his words. I was so impressed. I don't know why I've taken this long to really get to know him, because I've heard about him, since childhood, and we have a holiday for him now and a monument for him now, and I've seen documentaries on the civil rights movement, all that stuff. I've read his letter from Birmingham jail. I've listened to his speech, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but the famous speech that he gave, the March on Washington. And so I've always admired him, but I never really knew very much about him. So one thing that these sermons show is just how classically educated he was. He was deeply educated, and I didn't know it, but he got his degree from Boston University, which happens to be where my oldest son and his wife work. They work in the campus ministry there. But that was kind of cool that they were, they weren't being segregated when it came to giving degrees out. But he's very well versed in philosophy and theology. The other thing that is really evident in this is his love for Scripture. He really had such a deep understanding and such a broad-minded view that was still true to Revelation. So he's just a powerhouse, just incredible depth and eloquence, and so devoted to this cause. He could have had a nice job as a professor at Boston University, but he chose to go, into the trenches and fight the evil of segregation and racism. And he literally put his life on the line. He was a true martyr. He had to deal, and he has a chapter in here on fear, how he dealt with fear. And the very last sermon or whatever talks about his journey to nonviolence. But each sermon is just so profound. There's just so much, in each one, that it's timeless in its appeal. Even though at the time that he was writing these things, the Cold War was the big thing, communism was the big thing. It's still, even though sometimes, what he's referencing might sound more 1950s or 1960s, it still translates to what's going on now. I'll just read you some of the titles. This is How Should a Christian View Communism? I know that people said that he was a communist or something. He was not. I think he's been maligned in so many ways. Our God is able. Antidotes for fear. This whole sermon on fear and how to deal with fear when you're confronting the evils of the world was really profound. It was just an amazing experience. I grew to love the people in the book. I've only met them on Zoom, but we've been meeting for months. And, you wind up sharing a lot of your personal experience when you're talking about this sort of thing. And I just wound up really loving them and appreciating so much what they had to say. And it sounds cliche, but it was such a blessing. It was such a gift to have this going on in my life. So I was sad, but I was really sad that it was over. And we're taking a break, and then we're going to start up with maybe a devotional to do together. But I love this book club. And I want to see how it's going to relate to my life, to what I actually do with my life. Because this is a call, and you have to answer the call. But anyway, I want to read a biography of Martin Luther King and read more by him, because I'm very, very impressed by him, his words of wisdom, the timelessness. He was a true prophet, a true martyr, and the word I used was soul nourishing, and I found it very soul nourishing. And it was just something I personally needed in this time of tension, where we just have racial animosity has reared its ugly head again, and this was just the best thing to read. So, highly recommend Strength to Love by Martin Luther King. It's a slim thing, but it's so profound. You have to read it slowly and really contemplate it. But I really, really enjoyed this, and it was a very profound experience for me. Then the other book that I finished this week was The Summer Book by Tove Jansson or Jansson, not sure how you say that, Jansson. I always want to put one S and two N's on the end. It's never spell it right. So this was a quirky book. It kind of went with the weather this week, though, because it was so overcast and raining all the time. We'd have these, in the beginning of the week, we have these very dramatic thunderstorms that took down a tree in our backyard that we had to get taken care of. And it just rained and rained. And the thing was, it was hot and muggy, even though it was raining. It never really cooled down. And so in order to get away from the mugginess, the air conditioning was working too much. And so it was cold in the house, but it was hot and muggy and rainy and very dramatic outside. And that sort of the weird weather went with this book, because this book is very much, it's very descriptive of the weather on this little island in the, I guess it's the Baltic Sea, but it's islands off the coast of Finland. So they're very rocky, and they're way up north, and the whole description of the nature on the island, and you're constantly talking about the sea and the weather. And even though this is the summer book, even though it's summer, well, they get some hot weather. They can get snow. I mean, the weather is just crazy, way up north like that. And so the descriptions are quite lovely, and you really feel transported to this island. It's a quirky book. It's sort of from the point of view of both this grandmother and her little granddaughter, Sophia. Sophia is the only one that gets a name. The grandmother's just called grandmother, and there's also the father is also there, but I don't think he ever says a word. He's just in the background doing things. And they obviously have a relationship with him, but he never says anything, and we never hear his name. And I could really relate to this book because I'm getting older, and I'm with young children all the time, and the grandmother has trouble with her balance. I have trouble with my balance. She's older, though. I think she's maybe in her 80s. but she's trying to deal with keeping up with this young girl who I think is maybe, to me, she seemed more like 9 or 10. The introduction said 6. I don't remember them saying that, and I'm going to talk about the introduction in a minute, but anyway, I could really relate to the grandmother trying to keep up with this young girl who's got all this energy and needs protecting, doesn't have good judgment, so might do something like climb up something really high that's dangerous, and you, the older person, can't really get to them to protect them from their impulses, you know. So dealing with dizziness and not wanting to fall, and then also just being tired, just being exhausted by the sheer energy that's required in watching a child, and how she just wants to take naps all the time. I could really relate to that. This book there's a sadness about this book, because you know that the mother just died. Somehow the mother died. And you never hear anything about it except that it's stated once. But the little girl is going through a lot emotionally, and she tends to get upset and shout a lot. And the grandmother is sort of always grappling with how to deal with her eruptions of emotion. And the grandmother herself is, you know, she knows she's going to die soon. Death is approaching. And she's sort of wistfully remembering things in her life, or just grappling with, you know, the diminishment, your physical diminishment as you get older. So there's a sadness to the book, but at the same time, and the relationship is a little bit, it's very sparse in the way it describes the relationships. It's mostly through interactions, and you get some interior thoughts from either of them, but there's something sort of detached and sparse about that. That sort of kind of echoes the nature, the sort of the barrenness of the island too. And so I'll get to the introduction. The introduction, I read half the book, and then I decided to go back and read the introductions by Catherine Davis, who's a novelist herself. And she's a lovely writer, just beautiful. You know, you could tell she really appreciated Tove Jansson's writing. But she gets something wrong. She says in it that it's, let me see if I can find it now. It's not a short, it's a short one. Wait, where is it? It says that it's about, I'm not going to be able to find it now, but it says it's just about one long summer. And it isn't. It's obviously a succession of summers. So that's like a glaring thing that she missed. It's obviously a succession of summers. Like, here's one. There was one summer that was never referred to by year, but only as the summer of the great storm. So that's one. One summer, Sophia was suddenly afraid of small animals, and the smaller they were, the more afraid she was. It's obviously a succession of summers, and that she thought it was one long summer where all this various thing, which it couldn't possibly have happened in one summer. Just how did that get by any editors, or did she read the same book that I read? That was just such a glaring error. So it made me, come on, New York Review of Books or whatever, whoever published this, that just didn't make sense. Also, I noticed a typo. Yeah. Sometimes you wonder if how closely these editors read these books. Science does not yet know if it just breaks of if the worm is being clever, or it should be or if the worm is being clever, because you can't always tell. Little girl's writing a book because she's got this new fear of little animals. She accidentally cuts a worm in half when she's digging in the garden. They do a lot of gardening. That was another thing I liked about this book. And so she's sort of dealing with her fears by writing this book, and she's dictating it to the grandmother. Another thing I really liked about this book was that there was no TV. They never talk about the radio or the TV. They sleep, they eat, they wander around the island, they go boating, they garden, they daydream, they talk to each other, they read, they fish. but there's no TV or anything. That's something really restful about that, of just sort of just going back to like the most basic, just being in nature. I thought it was a lovely book. I recommend reading it. It is a little bit sad. There is a sadness about it. So when I really was very absorbed by it all week, and looking forward to reading it and having a hard time. At some points I was reading it when there was absolute chaos in the house. The kids from next door were over here playing with the 5-year-old, and it was absolutely chaotic, and I had my nose in this book. It was that absorbing. So I recommend the summer book by Tove Jansson. So those were my 2 books that I read this week. I also got a little bit further in Paradise. I really want to get another translation of this because Dorothy L. Sayers, who translated this version, she really, really wants to write in very old-fashioned speech, and I think I want a more contemporary translation. But I have gotten up to Canto 11, so I'm really going to have to. What's today's date? August 21st or something? So I really have to. And so this coming week I'm going to focus on finishing this. And I've got other books. I'm still working through the Kook Club, which unfortunately it's not grabbing me the way the other Swallows in Amazon's book grabbed me. I'm having trouble focusing on it. And then what else am I reading? I'm still working through the biography of James Monroe. So I'm going to try and finish both. I'm going to try and finish, and this is going to be a busy week, but I'm going to try and finish up this before the end of August, Kook Club, and the biography of James Monroe. And I also did a bit of a book haul this week. I got this book called 9 Days to Rediscover the Joy of Prayer by Jacques Philippe. So I've read a book by him called In the School of the Holy Spirit, which I loved. That was so profound. It was really, really good. And I thought, September is the 9th month. I'm going to be entering a really busy phase of my life. And, somebody said if you're, you should spend half an hour in prayer every day. And if you're really busy, you should spend an hour. Somebody said that. And I thought I need to, up my prayer game here. So I'm going to just start the first 9 days of September. I'm going to read this. So it's a 9-day sort of retreat on prayer. So that's one thing. And then Peg at the History Shelf did this great haul from Ignatius Press, and I went to the website after I watched her video, and these books were so discounted I had to get them. So they're by Kevin Starr, who I'd never heard of. Continental Ambitions, Roman Catholics in North America, the Colonial Experience. So this is a nice hefty one. It is beautifully produced. I mean, it really is. It's well written. I've already started reading it, and it's just a very nice book. And it's hefty. This is hefty because it's talking about New Spain and New France and all that sort of stuff. And then the second in the series, unfortunately, he died after only completing 10 of these chapters, so it's much shorter. But also this is on the American Revolution and early Republic, and frankly, Catholics didn't play as much of a role there. Mostly it was Episcopalians or Anglicans or whatever, and Protestants, so Puritans and that sort of thing. So, it probably was going to be thinner anyway, but he didn't quite finish it, so I'm not quite sure what they did. They said he had just completed 10 of the chapters, so is that all we got? I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a shame he passed away, because these look amazing. They really look good, and they were so inexpensive. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember now, but I think I paid less than $20 or something. I can't remember now, but it was a really good bargain. So, and then I also did a haul of board books for my grandson, who I am watching every day now. And that was, I won't show those. I didn't bother to bring them out. But anyway, that was fun, buying board books for him. So that's it from me. I hope you are doing well, and happy reading. Bye.